So welcome to a somewhat different series of Unconventional. This time around, we are at GRIMMFEST for an online interview special. GRIMMFEST is an annual horror film festival that takes place in Manchester, showing some of the scariest movies and the horrific short films of that year. Thanks for tuning in. Over to you, Kieran.
Thanks for that, Fran. For my next interview, I'm going to be speaking with Robert Woods, the director of An Ideal Host, a quirky film that bases some of its sci-fi horror themes on classic films like The Thing and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Let's jump into it. Okay, so first question is, what was the inspiration behind this film?
The main inspiration behind this film was the impetus to just make a film at all. It came out of working in the industry for a while, kind of behind the scenes, and wanting to get our foot in the door and show them that we could make something ourselves. So we just sort of thought, well, what's something fun that we would like to see that could be made for no money with just a bunch of friends over the holidays. And An Ideal Host was what we ended up coming up with after a long evolution, going through kind of various ideas about just people meeting up for some kind of dinner function.
So, what was there ever, during those early pre-production moments, was there ever a point where you thought, we're making a film that we want to put out there, we want to take it to festivals and that kind of thing, or was it really just something you wanted to do for fun, to hone your skills?
This was never intended to be a film. It was always intended to be a film that if we weren't 100% happy with it, that we would just make as a showreel piece, basically, to use on funding applications for other things, as like an example of work that we can put together, just so that we didn't want any pressure, because it was there were no producers involved, there were no outside funding bodies or anything. It was just a bunch of friends making something. We didn't want the pressure of having to deliver things that we might not be able to. It was really just about experimenting and see what we could come up with. And it was only really once it was finished that we could objectively look at it and go, do we think it's worth showing to anyone? And we thought, oh, we'll just enter it in a couple of festivals just for fun and see what happens. And surprisingly, it got into some. So that was a great fun surprise. Yeah.
I noticed that the music in the film, some of it was quite reminiscent of The Thing, the John Carpenter version.
Yeah.
Was that an intentional choice, or what was the reasoning behind that?
Very much so. The Thing is a big influence in this film, and I wrote all the music for it, and just the idea of that synth heartbeat going through the kind of storyline that we have. I just didn't see. It's so iconic. I just didn't see any other way of musicalizing what was going on. So it was just stuck in my head. So yeah, I just totally ripped it off.
Well, I mean, I would have said less of a rip-off and more of an homage.
Yes, let's go with that.
I mean, there's that whole idea that there are no original ideas anymore, which I don't personally agree with. I think there are no original starting off points, but that you can come up with an original idea through it. And I did feel as though there were inspirations taken from The Thing for this film, but it wasn't just a blatant rip-off. So I quite like the fact that you didn't shy away from that inspiration, and that there was, I'm quite glad that you said it was an intentional choice to have that music, because it's a nice homage to something that clearly inspired the film, which is great, and I wish we saw more of in cinema.
Oh, definitely. I think, there's quite a few references, I think, in the film that either consciously or subconsciously are in there. And when we were writing it, we were purposefully going through and watching all the other kind of films that were inspirations for it, and seeing how they did things, and trying to see how they solved problems of like a small cast and small location, and how to get around it, and how to keep a story moving and evolving. So we definitely cherry picked from people that have done far better before us.
So there was one shot in the film that lasted for just over 8 minutes, like a sort of continuous shot. What was the thinking behind that? Can you talk us through it?
The thinking behind that was twofold. The first was my more directly idea that the start of the film, the camera was very locked off and had a solid grounding to it, and that during the change of the film from kind of a change of one genre to another, as certain information is revealed, that things were kind of up in the air, that it would switch to a moving camera, but still stable-ish, like as a more stabilized kind of gimbal camera, that would just untether it from its base, like the same way the characters are starting to get untethered. And then as more information is revealed and things get even crazier, that stable camera kind of goes out the window, and it just becomes crazy. So that was the first thinking behind it, that we were trying to make the transition between these kind of two genres as smooth as possible, and try and just do it all and make it feel as organic as possible. The second reason behind that shot is that we had shot the dinner table scene, the previous scene before it, and it took 2 nights to shoot that scene and to get coverage on all 6, 7 people in around the table, and I was hoping it would only take 1 night, but there was just too much to get through, and I had thought, if I have to do coverage on that entire scene, we just won't make the schedule. So we decided to rehearse it like a play, and we spent the day doing that, and then shot maybe 4 or 5 takes, and then it was like, well, that was the least bad one, so let's just leave it at that and all go to bed.
Talk me through the concept for the aliens in the film. You already said that there was some inspiration from The Thing, but it's not quite The Thing. So yeah, talk us through it.
I know Tyler, our writer, wanted the aliens to be unique in some sort of way. Parasites taking over human hosts is a common trope in science fiction cinema. And the idea that they would be kind of bumbling, bureaucratic, incompetent people, just as much as concerned with keeping up appearances as the human characters in the film, was something that he came up with, and it kind of was the last piece of the puzzle that kind of clicked and made everything else fit together. In terms of practically how we decided to show the aliens, we tried to keep everything as practical as possible, and we wanted something small enough that was easy to make, with our limited means and carry around, and the idea of them being transferred via mouth-to-mouth contact was just kind of an arbitrary thing that we came up with, but just something visually that I know Tyler is an arachnophobe. He doesn't like tentacles or fingers or
Must have been fun writing that.
things. So that's something that we leaned into, something that would make us go ooh. And so yeah, we had a friend help us make some silicone puppets that we could use and just throw around on set, basically.
So my final question for you is, was there anything from the original draft that didn't make it into the film that you wish you could go back and throw in there?
The script was written only like 2 months before we shot, and we only did 2 drafts, and the second draft was really just tiny touch-ups that were done just before shooting, like the week before shooting. We didn't really have time, but basically what had happened was we don't get anything made unless we have a deadline, and we found that if we don't have a deadline, we just won't work on something. So I booked a location to shoot the film before anything else had happened, just to give us, something to work towards. And then of course the writing takes much longer than you ever anticipate. So the first draft of the film is probably 80% what's on the film, and that other 20% is, I would say, the structure. All of the scenes are exactly the same and exactly the same order, but it's just the dialogue in the actual specific language and back and forths is tweaked ever so slightly. But apart from that, nothing really changed because we just didn't have time. So yeah, we just ran with our first instincts. That the whole idea of this project was to just go forward with first idea and get it done in any way possible.
I suppose from a creative point of view, that was probably pretty good. Tyler knew the budget that you were working with, so would have written around that. You didn't have to answer to any executives or anything, so you got to make the film that you set out to make, which is...
Yeah, exactly. And it was nice to basically we locked in a location first, so we knew where we were going to shoot it, so we knew what was there, and basically we knew we would have this much time to shoot it, and we would have 2 weeks basically to shoot it, and we would have actors available for like most of that time. So let's just write around that, which is what we did.
Great. I do actually have one last cheeky question. What was your favourite scene to work on, or your favourite moment?
The car rolling down the hill at the end of the movie, with one of our characters in severely bad shape. At the time, we had written it, and I had no idea how to shoot it, what elements I would need in terms of like visual effects for pulling off some of that stuff, and without a stunt team or a crew of any kind, just my car and 2 friends and me holding a camera, how we could pull off a little kind of action set piece with like composited elements as well. And we just shot a bunch of random stuff on the day, and I had absolutely no idea how it would work. And then it was probably like a year later, after I had ignored looking at any of the footage out of shame for about 4 or 5 months, that I started looking at it going, all right, how can I put this together? And slowly started piecing that together into a workable sequence, and started doing some of the compositing and visual effects, and seeing that It kind of goes together. I think we can get away with that. So yeah, that was fun. I'm glad that kind of came together how I saw it in my head. Surprisingly.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Is there anything you'd like to say to our audience about the film before we sign off?
It's a no-budget film. It's very silly. Just have fun watching it. I hope you do. And please take it in the spirit that it was made, with a lot of love and a lot of fun.
All right, great. Thank you so much for speaking with us, and hope you enjoy the rest of GRIMMFEST.
Thank you.
See ya.
See ya.